It's the LIA Cast, the show where a couple visual storytellers get together, take a walk around a dicey topic, look at it from every conceivable angle, discuss it in abstract, then we hit the ground running with some helpy tips and ways to put these thinking things into action, because process is fun, as Owen Jolin says, and we think hard about visual storytelling, so you will too. My name is Jersey Droz, cartoonist and teaching artist. The other fella is...
Hey, I'm Rob Stenzinger. I am a coder and designer. How you doing, Jersey?
Doing good, Rob. How's your throat? How's your voice? Are you going to be good enough for an hour and a half?
I think I've got an hour and a half in me. Are you going to perform fantastic metal tunes that cause me to scream loudly at you for too long?
Yes.
Because I may not have that many minutes in me then.
Because that's what I do every day. Just kind of things, you know?
Oh, here we go.
With a flying V. No, really, what am I alluding to? You just got back from a concert yesterday. You saw Battlecross again. How many times have you seen him this year?
3. I think I've seen them 3 times in a year, or so. So last October was the first time I've seen them, and then it was like March, well, my second daughter was in utero, and she had a chance to get to that concert, and then this one, which was yesterday. Yeah, December 17th. Anyway, yeah, I love that band. They're out of Detroit. They're locals to you, right? And yeah, they're...
What's my excuse?
I don't know. You could feast. You could feast. Unstoppably feast.
They play every day in Detroit.
I know. It hurts me. See it go to waste. But, you know, I do what I can. And I enjoy and I celebrate them when they show up. So that was fun. But it did hurt my voice a little bit.
Well, I mean, that's something I think is worth bringing up on the show. I know I'm like stalling getting to like the curveball and the actual topic, but I anticipate this will be a fun one anyway. But also, I mean, this is something that I think people who listen to the show a lot and don't know this about you would be surprised to find out that, yeah, you've got an intense side, man.
I go wild. It's so fun. It's like I save it up and then I let it out, you know. And that's if I'm going to play guitar, if I'm going to enjoy someone else playing. Intense, passionate. That yet, and my sweet spot is someone who has like fun messages and intense concepts wrapped up in the sort of the I don't know what to call it. I don't want to keep repeating the word intense, but it's a very wonderful feeling for me to like have something packaged in that sort of form where you've got the double bass drums and the ups and downs and the contrasts that and the utter unleashed nature that metal can provide. And
sort of larger than life musical imagery.
Exactly. It's like epic storytelling, but in audio form.
Yeah, because I know you're a big Iron Maiden fan, and I'm at least familiar with Iron Maiden, and I know that's their lingua franca is great big giant mummies and zombies and like not in any kind of like gross or nasty way, but in this kind of like epic Norse kind of storytelling.
Heavy metal book report is what I think of them. Yeah.
Yeah. I saw Iron Maiden concert years ago, and I remember Bruce Dickinson, you couldn't hold the guy down. Like they had like a catwalk 40 feet up in the air, and he's climbing all over the thing like a little monkey and screaming at us and singing the whole time. Like,
yep. And it's a it's a joyful, fun experience. Where a lot of people, it depends on your context. Wherever you're coming from, you may hear that, and it could be discordant for you or tense, right? Only the tension. Whereas if you're into that, then yeah, it's a release.
So cool. Well, I'm glad you had a good time.
Thanks, man.
And I will try to take it easy on your voice for this episode. I'll try not to make you howl at me.
Okay.
But yes, we usually the topic this week is going to be it's the holidays. We're in the holiday season at the time of this recording, December 2014. And in years past, we've done a lot of different kinds of holiday themed topics, like preparing for next year, reflecting on this year. We just went through a big reflection period in the last episode, so we talked about it and we decided, maybe we should do one that's more casual but yet thoughtful. What are we reading, watching, and playing? But before we get to that, we got to do our intellectual warm-up exercise, Rob, our curveball,
Mm-hmm.
where we wrestle with a question where we're not looking for any kind of self-help book answer of just do these 6 things, but more like just chew on the topic, chew on the question for a little bit to get ourselves warmed up for the discussion, right? So I got one for you. You want it?
Okay. I'm ready.
You got the bat? Okay.
Yes.
This is a loaded question.
I only expect the best.
What is a guilty pleasure, Rob? What's a guilty pleasure?
Oh,
How would
fun.
you define such a thing?
Wow, super back to like curveball, straight up comfort food type question here. So yeah, guilty pleasure. I think it's something that if I am enjoying alone, I'm at least considering myself as part of a collective or a tribe where that pleasure is not necessarily shared equally among the members of the tribe, or where maybe I would expect other people would not see that pleasure as honorable and fitting of what our shared whatever definition is. So like maybe, like someone who is maybe stereotypically metal may feel like, oh, if I I don't know, enjoy slow dancing or something, or if I also listen to some other whatever, that
If you listen to like Western swing,
yeah,
in
exactly,
addition
like
to-
oh, that's so against the model and whatever, and so maybe I would actually feel like, oh, I like to, I love this, but I don't tell my metal friends, and that's what I hear when I hear guilty pleasure. So that.
See, you did
is,
not go where I thought you were going to go with this.
Yeah.
I had this one rigged. I had it rigged with a timer, and I thought you were going to cut the green wire and say there's no such thing as a guilty pleasure. But
I went with that's like arguing the I know they exist. I mean, it's a well established concept, but and then I can try to be all that guy and say I have no guilty pleasures, Jersey. I let it all hang out wherever I go, hanging out right here. Take it,
not like
And-
that. Not
or-
like that. Don't
No,
don't misunderstand me. I'm talking about like being honest with yourself about what you like.
Oh,
right?
sure. Yeah.
But at the same time, at the top of this one, when we were talking about Battlecross, you were careful to contextualize it and say, like, hey, this may sound discordant to you. But for me,
gosh,
it
yeah, I'm
doesn't.
very used to that. I've loved very aggressive metal for a long time, and yeah, I've been among people of different interests where that is very much not a not as they don't celebrate it like I do, and I just try to find a way to work around that. And I'm very accustomed to it because it's kind of a divisive thing, right? Inherently, it's so uncorked, and it's so like a guilty pleasure. It reminds me of just the whole right. Anytime I've done something outside of this whole like tight fence that I've put myself in. Like I remember when I first started to realize that I liked Super Nintendo, but I was a Genesis person, right? I was like, I hate Nintendo. Oh, it's terrible. I didn't have the first Nintendo. I would tolerate borrowing and asking friends to play their Nintendos, right? But I would never own one, right? And but I've got a Genesis now, and I love all these games, whatever. Anyway. And of course,
I don't know how
TurboGrafx
I
too.
missed out on that. I completely missed out on that whole Pepsi versus Coke thing with Nintendo and Genesis. Never got into a fight about it with anybody in junior high or high school.
It would need to be Pepsi, Coke, RC Cola, because actually I went from the TurboGrafx and I went, I don't need a Genesis. But then I went from that to the Genesis, and I went from that to Super Nintendo. So I went through multiple stages, and I still stuck to that approach to looking at it, where I'm like, how am I? I'm disloyal to whatever this other thing. Anyway, yeah, and so for a while when I was initially trying out Super NES, I was like, this doesn't feel right. It felt like a guilty pleasure. Super Mario World was a pretty great game to be packed in with the system, and I realized that, and I was like, oh boy,
For Mario
Now what?
World and the first Mario Kart were both revelations for 1991,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
Um, no, I mean, actually, to be clear, fair, and to not paint myself as some kind of saint who didn't argue with people about this kind of stuff, because I think what you're pointing at, the interesting place that you went with this that I didn't anticipate was the tribal aspect, because as a comic kid growing up, I had my Marvel friends and I had my DC friends, right?
Sure. Oh yeah.
And even to this day, when I meet guys my age, and they'll say like, "Oh, you grew up reading comics. Were you a Marvel guy or a DC guy?" And that's a telling thing that communicates something about expectations and stuff,
Mm.
right? So yeah, I can see how that feeds into what a lot of people call
Because
a guilty pleasure,
without that comparison, how is it guilty, right?
right?
Because who cares?
Exactly.
Uh,
Wow, I think you did it, Rob.
all right.
Nicely done.
That's a fun
Wax on, wax off, and we are through the curveball.
one. All right.
All right, do you want to get the topic then?
Yeah, I do. Like, yeah. So what are we talking about this week? And
All right.
as I shuck and jive while I'm waiting for the
For the notes to load?
yeah. Oh, okay, so let's introduce our topic before we transition then, right? So you mentioned like, well, we're not going to be covering something, that intense like we normally would try to ask questions about some sort of, creative issue we face or those that we know face, and then try to do something interesting from 10,000 feet up, as we call it, where we're sort of framing things and exploring it in more of an abstract philosophical sense, but then try to dig deeper, right? And then go into the 10,000 feet up and like, oh, this is, maybe we have some tips or, really concrete things to talk about. And I think we'll do that inherently because that's just how we are. But like what our topic is it's what are we reading? What are we watching and playing? So,
And even though that sounds on the surface very much like a laundry list of like, I think this is cool and I think this is cool, I know when we get talking about this, it's going to go into some weird philosophical places because that's just the way we're wired, right?
mm-hmm, totally.
Well, then, should I hit the transition? I'll hit the transition music. Flying 10,000 feet up, looking at the topic in abstract, turning it around in our mind, looking for all the hidden wrinkles and other dimensions, thinking about the thing, the aboutness of the topic, before we get to on the ground and start talking about the howness of the topic. So where did you want to start, Rob? I mean, you wanted to start with like framing it up with, well, you are the master framer after all, so maybe I should just let you frame it up. Rough voice or no?
Well, sure. I have some scrap lumber around here. It's only the conceptual type, and I'll just do what I can to glue it and prop it up and whatnot. The normally this time of year it can be heavy, right? I mean the holidays can be stressful, and yeah, I mean let's see. It can be challenging if you depending on how many people are you trying to see, how many people are you trying to not see, or and avoid, or to make things for. Clearing up like professional obligations to try to set aside time for all this other stuff. And then you have, Yahoos like Jersey and I, where we're like, let's think about something really difficult now. And so, we talked about stuff like in the past. I looked at our previous Decembers, and we've done like some weird heavier topics and like our practical topics. Like, oh yeah, let's still be focused on work all the time. And I don't think that's bad, right? I don't mean to dishonor our past selves, but it was fun to like say, wait a minute, let's be more, let's widen our scope, because that's not the only thing that goes on this time. And to be in service of that, to not just say, well, hey, let's just have a mellow, shoot the breeze kind of episode, or an emergent topic, and where we actually get serious about something that we end up finding out. Why don't we take a look at things that we try to squeeze in among maybe all those other activities that help us just unplug and relax and those come into the different kinds of media that we like to surround ourselves with, right? So
In a way, you're kind of pointing us at that analytic eye concept again, right? Because
Oh.
that's got to be there in the background.
Totally.
That's in the background radiation of everything we talk about. But I'm looking through the episodes that you captured from December's past, and
Mhm.
episode 13. I feel like a pang of regret every time I look at that title. That's the one when I started bashing Star Wars, and I was like trying to and I know, I mean, in retrospect, this is like a couple years ago now, right? Yeah, episode
Yeah.
13. It'd be a while ago.
20 No, yeah, episode 13 would have been 2011. So that was December of 2011. Like
3 years
right
ago.
after we did 30 classes in 30 days.
But yeah, I just remember like kind of getting worked up about like my big problems with the Star Wars movies, and like not like about like, oh, George Lucas is this, or like, oh, I hate land speeders or Ewoks are dumb, but more about like some like things philosophically. I'm like just I shudder whenever I think about like what that movie was communicating to me, and I kind of like started debating you on it and put like I remember putting you on the defensive or attempting to put you on the defensive. So that's funny that one made the list, because that's like one of the few episodes where I look back and go like, I don't feel that strongly about that anymore.
uh but yeah, I mean that's part of our exercise, right? Where we end up evolving our positions over time because we constantly question our positions and then try to apply that and see what it leads to. But at the it's in, let's see. So we covered lettering in comics, and we covered being comfortable with like I don't know, like Me Party. I think didn't that have to do with like celebrating your transitions and like
Yeah.
thresholds and whatnot?
Yeah, like I remember it was about taking the concept of the rite of passage and turning it from a ceremonial thing
Mm-hmm.
to a celebratory thing. I finished the thing. I'm no longer the person I was. Let's like enjoy this for a moment. Let's enjoy the transition rather than turn it into a pomp and circumstance thing, right?
Mm-hmm. Or ignore it and then just keep grinding. And as in something else to a reason to consider celebrating. But yeah, not
Yeah.
I'm not endorsing ignoring your hard work. um, we talked about the concept of cheating. Like, hey, does that exist? Like, oh, you traced an asset, shaking fists time and whatever, or you used reference that's very detailed, or you whatever, right? You're using Photoshop tools to really make your things very consistent or whatever. And it was fun to look at the like what is cheating and whatnot. But that doesn't sound too holiday chilling out, right?
No.
Nope. Let's see. Gosh, I mean, these were some fun topics, but it's so funny. And visualizing your pacing, that was like a thumbnailing episode, right?
Yep, that sounds right.
Yep. Holiday wish list. That was like one of our most. We're internet people and we make lists, and here's some curated content, everybody. And we try new stuff. And let's see. It was definitely laden with questioning and exploration, like anything we would record. But let's see. Reflecting on last year, planning for next year. That was one of our really big reflection episodes, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think we busted out the sort of the Susanna Conway self-interview things, I think.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, she had some interesting techniques, and that was really cool. And then I don't know, what happens when we commit to making things, right?
Yeah.
I don't remember that one.
That's more recent, and I don't remember it either.
I know, it's more recent. And then your art improvement holiday wish list. So,
that one I do remember.
Yeah.
That was another. Basically, it was like another way of rephrasing the whole idea of like reflecting on last year, planning for next year. It's like, okay, what did we go through? Where did we find ourselves coming up? Not as strong as we had hoped, and how would we hope to improve upon that in the coming year, kind of thing.
Totally. Like warming up for planning for next year's goals kind of thing.
I think that's the first thing that's worth reflecting upon. I mean, like just
Mm-hmm.
in a meta sense, is that I feel like we've finally gotten to a point where I don't think either of us would ever be the types to flex our muscles in front of the mirror and go like, "Look how hard I work." But I think that was a subharmonic channel in everything we did. Like, well, just because it's the holidays doesn't mean we should let up.
Oh, if you
Right.
play our record backwards, it's like, get to work. Get to work. You're not working hard enough.
And
I'm going to work harder with you, and I'm going to boogie and celebrate because we all need to work.
to what end? To what end are we doing this stuff after all? No, yeah,
I know.
and some of the other leaders have called us out on this. You know, Ashley Knapp has called me out on this point blank, and I appreciated that little splash of water in the face because I was like, yeah, you know, I see how that could come across that way, and I think that it's worth investigating. What are my motivations in behaving and talking that way? So, yet another, you know, little mark on the door jam as I'm growing.
It was only so recently we were just cranking out the pragmatic episodes, Jersey. No, I mean, this isn't to just, again, not to disparage that approach. I mean, it's just
Right.
saying like there's more, and that's worth investigating too. And also, like, this is thematically related to how we've been looking at, like, well, I guess it seems like we each have our own take on the tendency to be service minded. So, yeah.
And I think that this also is a direct result of doing the Art Sound Off Challenge. Like what we reflected on, what we gleaned, and what people said to us after the Art Sound Off Challenge was all extremely instructive. And yeah, I think what I gained from that is like a secondary reflection. Is it calmed me down a little bit.
And that's cool. I've been doing some you know, capturing text journaling since. Haven't done a you know, Polytechnic cast since November, but then but I am feeling the results of like just being saturated in that much reflection, and then it's been an interesting month, yeah, to sort of be informed by that and deciding what to do next. So,
So,
all right.
is that 10,000 feet up? I mean, did we already get through that? I mean, what else is there to say?
This is in the service of, well, let's explore some things that we have been, you know, reading and watching and playing, with the intent saying that, well, there's going to be, whether it's like the defining aspect of other folks' Decembers, there's probably some aspects where it's about winding down and you know, recharging or whatever, and then this is one of those things where we've curated a list, and let's see where it goes.
Yes. Your top 10 list of things to read, watch, and play this December, right?
Exactly.
Oh, that cues an ominous feeling, Rob. Lists. It means it's time to get on the ground. That was our fastest 10,000 feet up ever.
Mm-hmm.
So I do want to throw out a disclaimer at the top of this section. Just yesterday, at the time of this recording, I recorded a Comics Are Great episode with Dave Roman, Raina Telgemeier, and with my wife, Ann Drozd, and it was basically a huge episode of book recommendations. It was the whole hour we just spent just talking about, like, if you're looking for a last-minute comic gift this Christmas, holiday season, whatever you want to call it, here's books that we would recommend. So this is kind of going to fall a little bit into the same ballpark, I think. But in that way, the Comics Are Great show and LIA Cast can kind of become sister shows in the same week. But I think the spectrum we're going to try to reach here is going to be a little bit broader. We're not just going to talk about just comics. Obviously, if we're talking about reading, watching, and playing, you don't play comics unless you're reading Jason Shiga's comics. Then shigabooks.com.
Exactly. He does have an iPhone app.
He does.
Yeah, which I actually just recently picked that up. I didn't get very far because I initially picked vanilla ice cream, but but yeah, I mean, just to mention that, not to just to close off, he has a comic called Meanwhile, and an app that bears the same name, and it's essentially a choose your own adventure, branching narrative, which it's an amazing creative work, in my opinion. The amount of complexity that thing represents is stunning.
He has more than one book like that too. He has another book called Knock Knock, which I have like one of the few hand-bound copies of that he made, and it's the same kind of idea where there's a knock at the door, you're in a room by yourself, and then you have like everything in the room is numbered, and the number you choose takes you to the next page that you got to go to in order to find out what happens next. Like, are you going to jump out the window? Are you going to go under the bed? Are you going to answer the door? You know, if you answer the door, it's a guy with a gun, and he shoots you, you know. So, okay, well, that's not a good choice. So now we got to figure out another path, right? And think about the complexity that went into making that kind of a story. Crazy.
Oh yeah, it's to me it's the whole discipline of branching narrative, which is relates to writing dialogue and plot for RPGs. It's a fun topic to investigate. Yep. I don't have any particular thing about that other than you'll have a fun time exploring if you just search for branching narrative. Yep.
We will talk about that in the months to come. That
Totally.
is actually on our list of things to cover in future episodes of the LIA Cast. So, where do you want to start? Well, we're going to start with reading because that was the first one on the list. Reading, watching, playing. So, I've got my list. You've got yours. Where do you want to go?
Should we go back and forth?
Sure, we can go back
All
and
right.
forth.
So, really amazing book that I had an opportunity to read this year. It was called The Warren Commission Report, a graphic investigation.
I heard good things about this book.
And I mean, seriously, it's this. I don't consider myself like a Kennedy historian, right? I mean, I do remember watching the movie JFK and all the tropes that came out of that, and the kind of the dialogue that surrounded it about the creating the conspiracy theories and chewing through those. And I never really had any particular insight on it other than, yeah, I get that exists, and how do I feel about it today versus another day? And this book is a really cool exploration of different perspectives that is, I think, a great way to help. I mean, if you're fired up to try to pick what you think made those events happen, or if it's just trying to understand like what people are talking about with it, it's a great work, and highly recommend it. And it's also like, it's not just like this dry explanation of historical events where it's sort of just this droning narrative of like this then that then this then that, and then heavy syrupy commentary. It's really thoughtful commentary, and it has like personal feeling moments where it's like, wait a minute, this is history, and how is this? But it becomes very human, and like you're in the moment in a few different times in particular. I mean, of course, when you're in the car with Jackie Kennedy, that is super intense, and of course, later on with oh gosh, what is his name?
Governor Connolly?
Well, leaving the courtroom. Well, that was super heavy too, of course. But
are you talking about Oswald?
It was not Oswald. Yes, it was Oswald leaving the courtroom. And there's moments that you're like, that would be intense no matter what comic you would be reading or whatnot. And this happens to be, historical figures and whatnot. So very
right.
Cool.
Like, yeah, I know what you're saying. Like, there's the scene that we talked about on the LIA Cast in the past. Like, one of the scenes I liked working on the most in the book was the part where Jack Ruby shoots Oswald. And that's not the action of shooting Oswald that I enjoyed. It was the staging of it and finding how that felt and expressing that, right? And, like, I can say to you, well, then Oswald was being escorted by the police, and Jack Ruby, this kind of nut job, jumped out of the crowd and shot Oswald. And it kind of made things even more complicated. That tells you what happened. but getting inside the characters or the people's mindsets, and using the what am I trying to say?
Oh, dude,
Like
it juxtaposed his freaking court testimony
that's what it was. Yeah, his
with those events,
testimony.
and it's like
Yeah.
that created. It's not even like there was this invention of like, oh, I'm going to reimagine the scene, and now it's going to get super foreshortened. And
No, all we did is
crazy,
we showed exactly what happened and used his exact words.
and it becomes super hunting, and then it's
Yeah.
like just go buy it.
Yeah.
So
Well,
there you
thanks.
go.
Thanks for that. That was a very nice thing to say. I hope people like it. I hope people like it a lot because I'd like to do more books. I've got another book that a nonfiction book that I'd really like to do that I think I showed you some of, Rob, and it'd be really cool if I got the chance to do it. So,
That would.
speaking of reading, I've got something that you, my friend, if you have not read it, you need to, and I'm going to do a screen share so you can see it. Here we go. So, and funny enough, it's another Abrams book, and it is a book called Sing No Evil. Have you heard of this, Rob?
I have not.
All right. Here's the thing. First of all, I'm going to click on this image so you can see. This is a scene of the band playing in the book. Oh, come on. Get bigger. Get bigger. Oh, I'll have to zoom in manually, the old-fashioned way. Okay. I don't know if you can see that.
Oh yeah.
J.P. Ahonen is the cartoonist on this, and that guy, first of all, and I already talked about this in the Comics Are Great show, but like, this guy knows color like crazy. But when I said, Rob, you need to read this book, is this comic is as if JP feels about music the way I feel about comics, and he uses the comics medium to do like my version of fast talking about why I love comics so much.
Oh my gosh.
And it's about this band and this young guy who's like, he's in this band called Pekaros or Perkeros or something like that. And it's in a semi-realistic, or it's in a realistic semi-fantasy setting in the sense that all these bands have animal drummers, but the rest of them are just people. And like nobody questions the fact they have an animal drummer. So in Perkeros, they have a bear who plays the drums, and he's just called Bear. And like there's like a black metal band, which I'll pull up here. You guys see this. The way he expresses sound in the comic is so good. Like here's the black metal band performing, and they have a badger playing the drums. Can you see it?
Yeah. Oh my god. It looks super intense. Like it's interesting. Like that first scene, how it was colored, it was so rich, and you could feel the sweat.
Yeah.
Because of the heat.
Well, and here's when their lead singer first starts singing for them, and he's like blowing them away as he's like auditioning. But okay, so the plot, let's get into plot. Plot is that it's about this young guy in this band, and he's the front man, but he's really uptight and persnickety about the way he sings, and he's got a stammer, he's got a stutter that he has in everyday speaking, and he's found this way of singing that isn't very marketable. Like the audience just doesn't seem to respond very well to it, and everybody else in the band's like, "There's something wrong with the way you sing." But in his own personal studies, like when he's practicing by himself, at one point he honestly believes like he was levitating from the music. He hit the harmonies just right, and he felt like he was levitating. Was it real? Was it not? Was I hallucinating? I don't know. And without spoiling anything, one of the things that gets explored in the story is, the string theory of how the universe is all just vibration. Right? Like when you get down to string theory, it's just vibrating strings that make up atoms, that make up molecules, and so on. And so when you boil it all down, all matter, all energy is all just vibration. And music, song, is when you know how to do it just right, it can actually change reality. And it ties into like ancient mysticism, but also into science. They bring it into like scientific stuff. And there's like fantasy characters who may be old wizards, or they may just be a crazy old guy who used to follow the Who around. It's a little bit ambiguous on that, but it's believable enough because you have animals playing the drums. But anyway, it culminates. It takes a turn from following angry, frustrated young musician to musical quest character who trips upon a horror story. but the whole thing is like, and the sound design is exquisite. This guy, like, he really thought hard about the way he does his sound. Like, there's like an electronic band that shows up later on in the story, and like the musical notes are all rendered very mathematically, and the lyrics are all done in like Commodore 64 font. And then, like in like more, swooshy melodic songs, he'll use more cursive stuff. So he's really thinking hard about his sound design. His color design is exquisite, but also just the fact that when I put the book down, I was like, I kind of like music a lot more now. So that's Sing No Evil by J.P. Ahonen and K.P. Allar. So that's something I read recently that I really, really enjoyed.
That sounds pretty amazing.
You need to read it.
Yes. That is crazy. We should do this more often. So let's see. There is a lot of times I consume my books via Audible, and sometimes I'll actually get both the Audible book and an Amazon Kindle version, because they do this bundle pricing that makes it pretty handy. And I find like my main consumption is the Audible, and then I'll go back and like refer and look up things in the Kindle version.
Don't they do something too where they have that like whisper sync? And I don't want to turn this into a commercial for Kindle, but they have that whisper sync thing where it's like if you stop, you're on the bus and you get off your stop and you stop the Audible book there, and if you break out your Kindle, it'll like queue up to where you left off in the text version. That's actually kind of cool. That's actually a really good user experience. It
is, and it's a mixed bag that isn't ubiquitous across all audiobooks and all digital print books and whatnot. That would be kind of amazing, but yeah, it's all on the Amazon platform. And so that trade-off aside, it's I do find myself doing this. It's pretty fun. I just wanted to mention that's kind of my primary mode of consuming reading, and that definitely colors the things I recommend, because I look for things that are available on Audible, and then also well, there you go. I mean, so it's like that's the grounds of I'm hunting in, basically. And there's a book that I recently learned of called that I heard as an Audible book called "You Are Now Less Dumb." And I mentioned this during the Art Sound Off event, because that's when I started reading it. And I call it reading too, because I mean it's unabridged. It's the entire book and all that kind of stuff. And
listening is not a passive activity. And
no.
Right? Like, don't push my buttons, Rob. This is like you're pushing the same buttons that when people say comics are easy to read.
Well, I don't want. This is not to push a button, but like that, like double encoding information, or when you have that juxtaposition, that can improve comprehension, right? Mm-hmm. So maybe that's what sometimes what people mean by easier to read, but sometimes it's often presented in a pejorative manner, where it's like, oh, you look at pictures and you grunt, and
it's also pushing another hot button issue for me, is in that and this is totally tangential, but we'll round back to talking about the book. Is when parents will see their students in my classroom, or they'll see their kids in my classroom, and they'll see the kids not looking at me when I'm talking, and they'll come over to the kid and they'll be like, "Hey, pay attention." I'm like, the kid's paying attention. You can listen without making eye contact, and sometimes the fact that he's doodling, that's him processing what I'm saying. Don't do that. Do not do that. Since then, I've been forced to know parents' policy in my classrooms because of things like that, and for other reasons. But yeah, like, this is all to say that listening is super, super intellectually stimulating, right?
Mm-hmm. And it's I enjoyed that experience, and I suppose I can set that aside and just talk about the book. So "You Are Now Less Dumb" is it's more or less a tour that is exploring cognitive biases, logical fallacies, and like not just look at how imperfect our rational mind is, but and exploring that from the science of psychology standpoint, and some neurobiology and whatnot, but also looking at it once you characterize those sort of flaws in reasoning, you could be working around them and trying to now that you can see that, you can counter it and whatnot. So that's the overall intent of the book, is to explore those weaknesses with the intent of trying to be aware and then try to improve your logic, more or less. And it's essentially the tour isn't just like, here's a definition of sunk cost fallacy, and it does that, but then it puts it into these narratives that have to do with studies, typically, like where and and some of them are really like, I've heard a chunk of the book about twice, and I've heard the whole thing once, but like some of it gets into how it reminds me of how the discoveries in psychology aren't always the most clean, because like, for instance, there is, as in like very clean from an ethical standpoint, because there was, for instance, I don't know what led to this situation, but there was a group of children living in a remote area that they were essentially brought into sort of a camp to help them, I don't know, to help them, right? But they were also being studied while they were in this camp to look at the tribal nature of people. Exactly. I saw their jersey had quite a look, because it wasn't like, hey, let's help you out. You need meals, and you need to not be fending off bears and stuff. You need to be a child and try to learn and grow and be nurtured. It was also like, and I'm going to study how weird you are,
Yeah.
and learn more about the human condition by seeing how these kids, when divided up into two different groups, adopted some aggressive tribal behaviors, right? Anyway, that was that makes it sound super bleak. The book isn't full of that kind of thing, but that is an example of one of those studies where it's like, hey, wait a minute, that's I need to learn more about that. But what's fun is like this rich tour that it's like, oh, now I have this quick list of things I could go Google when I have some time, and I'll just add it to my radar. And also, it's written in the voice of David McRaney, which he is he's cheeky and he's funny with how he just sort of laughs at how silly and dumb we all are, and himself included. So it's good stuff.
So he's laughing with us,
Mm-hmm.
not at us.
Absolutely.
You are now less dumb by Dave McRaney.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great title, by the way.
Yes. He also does the You Are Not So Smart podcast.
That's right, which you mentioned on a past show. Mm-hmm. You are now less dumb and you are not so smart.
Yeah.
All right, sold. Just those two titles alone does it for me. Another thing I'm reading, and this is another one I talked about on the Comics Are Great show, but it's worth repeating because I think we're speaking to different audiences here anyway. This is something that I think you should get for your daughter this year, Rob. So this is, have you heard about this, El Defo?
No.
Oh my gosh, it's so good. I mean, this is easily one of the best books of comic books of 2014. Might be one of the best books of the decade, in my opinion. I mean, I know I have a propensity for hyperbole, but man, I am not kidding about this book. It's so good. So what is it about? Well, as you can see on the cover, it's got a superhero bunny with some kind of apparatus on her chest. And the title suggests something to do with hearing, El Defo. It's Cece Bell's, Cece Bell, who did a bunch of children's books before, Sock Monkey and things like that. She did her autobiography. And it's about her as a little girl losing her hearing at an early age. And this would be like in the late 70s, early 80s, somewhere in there, maybe early 70s. So she learned, instead of learning sign language, she learned lip reading. And she goes to public school, can't hear so good. She can read lips, but like if the teacher ever turns her back to the class to write on the board, she cannot tell what the teacher is saying. So she gets this thing called the phonic ear. Now remember, she's in like 3rd, 4th grade, that neighborhood. Phonic ear is this like tape deck sized apparatus that she has to wear under her shirt, like strapped over her arms, and then earphones go in, and then the teacher gets a microphone that they hang around their neck, and then they can speak normally, and then it's amplified through the phonic ear into Cece's ears, right? So she can hear the teacher now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're in third, fourth grade. You got this funny thing that you got to wear. I mean, we all knew a kid like that. Like I knew a kid who had leg braces when I was growing up, right? And it makes you different. It makes you stand out. And it makes some kids treat you differently. Unfortunately, that's the case. And so she covers that. And it's about like, dealing with this whole situation being different. Then one day she discovers that this phonic ear apparatus that the teacher's wearing, teacher's not taking it off. Teacher's going into the teacher's lounge and talking smack about people. Teacher's going to the bathroom and she gets to hear all this. And she's getting all this secret information that now suddenly she's got a superpower. She can hear the teacher wherever the teacher is, and she can spread the word to all her students. So when the teacher's like, "Oh, I'm going to leave the room for a moment. Everybody keep working. I'll be back shortly," right? Everybody's going to behave because they don't know when teacher's coming back. But now Cece knows when teacher's coming back. Cece knows when the teacher's coming down the hallway, so the kids could go crazy and they could use her super hearing to help them, like misbehave and things. So she winds up making friends with this superpower. And it's also about friendship. It's about like growing up and like, do I like this kid? Do I not like this kid? Misunderstandings, fights that you get into with your friends. And one of the things that, and again, this is something I talked about on the Comics Are Great show, that I just adored is how well she captures the feeling of being young. I'm trying to find the page where she's trying to decide whether or not she wants to be friends with somebody, and like this kid in class is like, "Hey, you want?" This kid who's kind of pushed her around in the past offers her a Frito, and then as she's contemplating taking the Frito, she's making a pro-con list in her head, and she's like, "Should I be friends with this person or not?" Pro, offered me Fritos. Con, kind of pushy. And sometimes that's all it takes to start a friendship when you're that age. But then also, because of the subject matter and because it's comics, she does these wonderful things where she expresses visually what it's like to be hard of hearing and to have a hearing problem, right?
Wow.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, having empty word balloons.
Empty word balloons or
And
confounded word balloons. There's parts
yeah.
where if like the sound is garbled, she'll garble the letters so that you get a sense of what it sounds like. Here's somebody's. I don't know how well this is going to show up, but this panel right here with her voice is fading away, right? Stuff like that. You know how excited I get about sound design in comics. So, on top of everything, on top of being this wonderful, heartfelt, sweet story that is totally accessible to little kids, and it's just the right kind of story for little kids to read, it also is masterfully done with really, it does like everything that comics does best. So, yeah, El Defo by C.C. Bell. I mean, I cannot get enough of this book. And again, full disclosure, it's another Abrams book. Hey, those Abrams people, they do some good stuff.
They really do. That's awesome. I can't wait to actually pick it up and read it with my daughter. So thanks, man. And maybe we should do this again because this is going really well. Should we do another book?
Yes, please.
All right, one more. All right. Let's see. I kind of want to do. I want to do two more real quick. I'll do one quick one because I don't want to skip it. It was recommended by Owen Jollins, and it's called 59 Seconds.
I remember this, yeah.
And it's in a way it's one of those books that's not to dislike. Let's see, Predictably Irrational and stuff like that, where it's a tour of some psychological studies and saying it more or less trying to pull out things that we could learn, that's the pragmatic things we can learn from those studies and whatnot, and often within some certain theme. Like predictably irrational is mostly about the how we don't make rational choices typically in the way that we frame that up, and You Are Now Less Dumb is super similar. And then also like 59 Seconds is like its own tour of a bunch of different studies that has a different theme because it's really building up to, in a way, you could think of it's a little more emphatically about the, how could you be more, right? And more whatever, fill in the blank, fulfilled, effective, relaxed, whatever. And yeah, so that it was a really good book, and I do recommend it. It was very fun, and I didn't want to totally skip that, but because there's another one that I've mentioned a few times before, and I've read a few times, and it's super entertaining every single time. It's called Ready Player One, and that's that book by Ernest Cline, which is this wild love letter to like 80s nostalgia in some ways, and that may totally scare the heck out of most everyone, but like it does it in such a fun fantasy way, and in mixes like Snow Crash, The Matrix, Lord of the Rings kind of thing, and geek culture, and but it does it in a sci-fi not quite post-apocalyptic, but like, future scenario where imagine like there were a person that was somehow the amalgamation of like a top tier game designer plus Bill Gates plus Steve Jobs that was running something like World of Warcraft but was even bigger, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was all like VR based. And then that person worked super hard on that sort of life, and pursuit and passion, did not have any heirs, and then died, but then left his, like in his will, like he basically coded some quests in his own game, and like that's what you can do to receive his fortune. And there you go.
Kind of like Willy Wonka in the Chocolate Factory meets Pat Labor. You ever see Pat Labor?
It rings a bell. It's an anime, but
it's an anime, yeah, and it's this crazy. It's a little bit darker than what you're describing. I mean, and Pat Labor, this genius on the same order that you're describing, creates an instrument to wipe out all mankind, and nobody knows where it is or what it is, but he leaves clues behind to try to unravel the mystery. And the way to what they discover through the story is that the clues are leading up to you making good choices, proving yourself worthy, and the only person who can unlock the final clue has to be a truly worthy human being to justify humanity's continued existence. But it's the same kind of deal, but instead of questing for a prize, it's questing to save mankind. And you think it's just like this machinations of a madman who just is like, the height of misanthropic. But what it's really, it's like this genius leaves one final test for humanity behind him. It's a pretty interesting anime. It's beautifully animated too. It's got giant robots.
Cool.
The Ready Player One.
Yeah. Really fun
notes,
book. Oh my gosh, and the audiobook is narrated by Will Wheaton. Masterfully too.
He's a great actor. They couldn't have picked somebody better. I mean, like that's like the guy. That's the guy you get for that book, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty great.
So, shall we talk about what we're watching?
Talk about what we're watching,
right.
Rob. What are we watching? You start, because I want to talk about Bob's Burgers. I didn't know that you were watching this.
Well, I have a little bit of a pop culture deficit, and I'm working to just get in the habit where, I mean, I've seen some people where I'm like, yeah, that's right. I mean, I have Netflix on my phone. I could, I have Amazon streaming video. Wait a minute, I could catch a couple things, something on the bus, or just before bed and not disturb anybody, or whatever. And like, it's not that big of a logistical challenge. I can do this, right? And so yeah, I've been checking out Bob's Burgers. And,
but wait! I want to get to the thing you put in the notes first. I'm sorry, I skipped over this.
One of the things, because I what was it? It was the other, right around the Thanksgiving holiday. I did take like an extra day off, right? And I'm like, oh boy, I'm gonna watch a movie, and the one I picked was Snowpiercer.
Which I have not seen, and everybody's been telling me that I need to see it. But then, do I need to see it, Rob?
Well, I would guess no. It has a lot of interesting concepts. I'm not going to ruin anything related to the plot. Like if you sit through the intro, you're going to be like, oh yeah, sweet. This is a really intriguing post-apocalyptic setting for
Isn't it
mankind to be
like
in.
all of humanity is stuck on a train?
Everyone's on a train, and
Okay.
the planet is frozen, and it's an interesting scenario. It is truly like one of those sci-fi bleak short story kind of things where you're getting into some combination of dark and light philosophy, right? It's like,
Okay.
ooh, what's in here, right?
Mhm.
It's in this intriguing wrapper, and yeah, there's definitely those elements, but then it's a story that for me, I'm not going to say any spoilers, but when someone essentially when a writer conveys, well, here's a set of circumstance and then a character that's going to continue through the story or whatever, and you would think that there's a sort of exchange of energy, right? So from a difficult situation to an improved circumstance or what have you, or what, like kind of a balancing of energy that happens in a story as things sort of progress. And it felt like the resolution was just full of a kind of cleverness that I don't groove on. So, and I don't want to ruin anything. So, but I can totally see lots of people grooving on that. So there you go. My super non-committal. That was interesting, but it's not for me. Kind of explanation.
Oh, that's always a bummer.
Yeah.
So you finally sit down to watch a movie.
Oh boy.
See,
And it was
that
there was
almost
some head
hurts worse.
scratching. What's that?
That almost hurts worse when that happens. You know, when you're like, all
Well, I
right,
felt like I saved myself for the wrong movie.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like-
That's good. No, back when my wife, when Ann and I were courting, she used to work at a movie theater. This is when we were really young.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and which meant I got to see free movies. And I remember a couple times walking out of the theater like just mad, just angry. And you know, the friends I was with would be like, "What? You saw it for free? What are you angry about? Like, you're not out anything. I'm out my time. I'm out my time, and I set time aside for this. And there's that whole anticipation, like, oh, this is gonna be good. This sounds
and
really
you invested in it before you went, right?
Yeah.
Because the anticipation, and then you're hoping on some kind of return of like, oh, this is
Yeah.
going to be a whatever.
And like, you don't walk out going like, oh, I hate everybody in that movie, and I hate everybody who made that movie. It's more like, oh, that was such a disappointing experience, and I'm unhappy.
I literally I actually like bathed myself in Cosmos afterwards, where I was just
Sweet.
like, oh,
Okay, nice transition.
yeah, and that's what led me to say like, that's it. I'm diving into Cosmos because I know this is going to be a happy place.
Yeah. That's
I'm
a good
going-
series, isn't it?
It really is. I'm super impressed.
I
with,
was very skeptical about that show because I'm such a fan of the original Carl Sagan series, and I was like, I like Neil deGrasse Tyson just fine,
Mhm.
but really, do you need to remake that? How? But then they did it in a way that I think like honors the original, but goes into some new places and does some new things, and like the animation for all like the historical sequences are so good.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it does this wonderful job of presenting some fun connecting threads and context among the like building up to an important scientific concept, and then bringing in the history, and so you get some personalities and some drama and narrative while also getting a science lesson, and it's really it's gorgeous and super like it is a feast for your senses kind of show.
Yeah.
I actually would love to see it like on a surround system at some point or whatever. It's just super cool, like the audio, everything.
As a fan of the Connection series, I imagine you probably really dig what Cosmos attempts to do too, because it does a lot of what you described. The Connection series does
Yes.
by showing like, okay, let's take a key concept. Let's take like the concept of light. What is light?
Mhm.
Okay, well, Newton discovered this, and he did this and this and this, which led to this. And this other guy who was struggling at a much later date was playing with this, and because of the thing Newton did, he got to do this right. So
Exactly. Yeah, and I have a huge affection for Connections by James Perk. It's many of them are on YouTube, and you're welcome. But it's it's so good. But what's so funny is we ended up skipping over Bob's Burgers. Bob's Burgers was an innocent bystander among all this Snowpiercer stuff.
Sorry, that was my doing.
No, it's fine. But it was more. It was important to jump to Cosmos because I was like, yeah,
Cosmos is how you wash the snow chaser off. Yeah.
exactly. Snow chaser. Exactly.
Oh, Snowpiercer. Sorry, not Snow Chaser.
No, that's funny. Good way to describe it. So it's so Bob's Burgers. I don't know why. I think I have an element of the Sega battle in me still, but when I see how like someone has framed up another family in like some Fox cartoon comedy situation, I'm like, oh, suspicion. Just like my suspicion meter just bubbles over where I'm like, boop, 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 boop. No, baloney, stay away. Something's, it's just gonna make me sad. It's gonna be people, making jokes, punching people, and it's like, I don't know.
Yep, Dad's gonna say something that's like a little bit too offensive for a cartoon, and he's gonna say it in front of children.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
even like, I mean, I love. I've loved South Park at different times. I mean,
Sure.
I've fallen out of it mostly because I don't have cable, right?
Yeah.
And also like I get saturated where I'm like, yeah, okay, yep, I'm
Yeah.
good for a while. I'm full. And but Bob's Burgers, I was like totally suspicious of this show, and I'm a dorks because then it was endorsed by my wife makes fun of me because I'm like, oh yeah, Merlin Mann mentioned this thing, and I'm like, she's like, well, Merlin Mann mentioned it, so we totally got to watch. I'm like, yeah, whatever.
Merlin Mann eats human flesh.
No, but there he goes endorsing a cartoon, and I'm like, oh, maybe. So
It's really good.
It is
really good.
So you've been watching it a while. What got you into it?
Well, I'm a huge fan of Lauren Bouchard in general. I mean, he co-created Dr. Katz. Have you ever watched that?
That's the connection. Okay.
Yeah,
yes, I did.
H. John
I
Benjamin.
love Dr. Katz. Yeah.
Yeah, H. John Benjamin, who played Ben on Dr. Katz, he plays Bob on Bob's Burgers. And Lauren Bouchard was the co-creator of that, co-creator of Bob's Burgers. They also did a series together called Home Movies. Did you ever watch that?
Yeah.
Yeah, same guys, same team.
Wow.
So, first of all, I've been a fan of their stuff since the 90s, right? And so there was less of a leap of faith for me. It's like, okay, Lauren Bouchard's on this, H. John Benjamin's involved with this. It's going to be probably pretty good.
Gosh, I really should pay way more attention to the creative teams behind stuff like that.
It does help with
That's
the decision-making process, yeah. But then again, Seth MacFarlane was behind Cosmos, right? And like I tried watching Family Guy, and I just cannot get into it. Like there is a cynicism about that show that just it's like too much pepper. It's like way too much pepper on something. I'm like, it smells fine from a distance, but once I get up close to it, I'm like, I gotta wash my mouth out. So when I heard he was involved with Cosmos, I'm like, how does that even work? Is it going to be like Neil deGrasse Tyson's going to make a fart joke or something? Like this is the great red spot of Jupiter, which is kind of like a nipple or something like that, right?
That was good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, the thing about Bob's Burgers that stands out to me, and other people have said this too, is that, and this is the secret to Dr. Katz and Home Movies, is that even though the humor can be kind of snarky at times, the central thesis of the show is people who love each other, right? Dr. Katz is about a father and son who love each other. Home Movies is about three friends who love each other. And Bob's Burgers is about a family who, even when they're in the middle of strife, they all really love each other. Linda, and I've seen this written elsewhere, Linda Belcher is not the long-suffering wife who's going like, oh, another quick get-rich-quick scheme, huh, Bob? Oh, what are we doing here? She loves him like crazy, and she sees no fault with him, not in a blind way, but in like this very accepting, loving way, right? And she'll call him out on being wrong. Like I don't know if you haven't seen that many episodes yet, right? Or have you?
I have watched through like season 3, episode 6 or 7.
Okay, so you've seen the video game one. You've seen the one with Burger Boss.
Yes, I have.
Right, and so like, yeah, he does crazy stuff sometimes, and she's like, oh, Bobby, come on, knock that off or whatever. But you can tell that she's not like rolling her eyes and going like, look at my life, right? Tina Belcher is like, she's weird she's that weird, greasy kid we all knew in middle school, but she knows who she is, and she's accepted who she is. She's like the pinnacle of self-esteem, but it puts her in a place where she is like this strange person that nobody knows what to make of, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like there's a lot of positive stuff in that show, even if the humor gets on the snarky side, right?
Absolutely. And like to me, it's as if someone said, "We have a family. There's going to be this. We're going to have a show. It's going to be a family running a burger joint, and it's going to be as if, So and they love each other, yet they deal with everything in a humorous manner, right?
Yeah.
And they want to express their whatever with the world through that humor for their own needs, but also to make each other laugh. It's like they're really trying to, like, be playful at the heart of, like, even if things are a bit snarky. There's this really fun heart to it, and it's awesome.
Anne likes the show even more than I do, and like whenever we talk about this whole idea of like child rearing, she says to me, she's like, "If you can guarantee me that I'd have a son like Gene, I'd be on board." Just wants a kid who just scream happily all the time, because that's what Gene does. No matter what he's talking about, he's super happy about it, and he's super on board. Like OT, the outside toilet, is like one of the best episodes of Gene.
Okay, I haven't gotten to that one yet.
Oh my god, you got to see that one. So good. It's obviously it's a send up to ET, but they put their own spin on it.
The first two I saw were the Thanksgiving episode, season 3, episode 5, and then season 1, episode 4. So, which is called Sexy Dance Fighting.
Yes. Where Linda, Bob keeps talking about his 4:00 appointment. His 4:00 appointment is where he does a number 2. He always does a number 2 at 4:00. And then Linda suggests, why don't you have like little appointments throughout the day, little poops.
Exactly. Yes, awesome bit, because she's being so subtle, and then just puts a lampshade on it right at the end. So funny. Anyway, it's a family that's trying to make each other laugh all the time. It's freaking wonderful.
Yeah.
Even when they're having a hard time. So it's I'm stunned how, and I love shows like Archer and whatnot too, but I get saturated with those kind of shows where it's like dark and that's that, which totally cool, but like I get saturated at a certain point. I gotta take a break. I haven't needed to take a break from Bob's Burgers.
No, I look forward to every episode.
But Jersey, tell me something about
what I've been watching. What have I been watching? So, okay, I've got a scoop. I'm going to give an exclusive here on the LIA Cast.
What?
Yes. Tomorrow, at the time of this recording, so Friday, December 19th? Yes, December 19th.
Yeah.
I'm going to be dropping a new episode of the Saturday Supercast that I recorded with Dave Roman about a show called Over the Garden Wall. Have you watched this, Rob?
I have not.
Watch this. It's a miniseries. It's a Cartoon Network miniseries, and since you don't have broadcast cable, as I do not myself, you might have to wind up getting it through iTunes or through the Google Play Store or Amazon or something. It's and it's like standard definition. You can get it for like $6. High def, you get it for $10. I don't often tell people how to spend their money gladly, but in this case, I will say it is $10 very well spent. It's a 10-part miniseries, 10 minutes per episode, and it's about two boys who find themselves lost in the woods, and they wind up going through these different storybook kinds of stories. They're not storybook stories we recognize. They're new, but they evoke the feeling of being lost in a series of fairy tales. And they're just trying to find their way home. And, oh my gosh, and this is another thing that this would be so good to watch with your daughter, because let me see if I can hit the points without spoiling anything. They encounter... Okay, I'll say one of the things I said in the Supercast. The series is constructed as if to say, young one, you're going to enter the world someday. And when you enter that world, you're going to encounter people who you don't really understand, who seem kind of strange. Maybe sometimes they're going to seem a little scary. But sometimes the scary people aren't scary at all once you take the time to actually understand them. And sometimes the people you thought that weren't scary are really scary. And it's up to you to negotiate those moments. And solving them with violence is not going to get you very far. But solving them with intelligence and compassion and in wit and with through your own growth as a character, that will get you very far. And not only will that get you very far, but it's going to make the world itself a better place to be in. Not because you set out to do that, but because by pursuing honest growth and honest interaction with other people, that as a byproduct makes the world a better place. That's the thesis of the series. It's not. It doesn't come across loudly. They're not shouting it at you. It's not like a He-Man moral where like the character walks onto the set at the end and says, "This is what we learned about today." It's there, but it's very quiet and subtle, and it's more about watching these wonderful characters engage in truly visually arresting and sometimes very frightening images. But it's like Spirited Away. You've seen Spirited Away, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's like that, where it's like it's just on the edge of frightening, but it's like just the right kind of frightening for young people, you know, where they go, okay, I don't know if I'm comfortable with this now, but overall the story has a very positive spin to it. It's going in a positive direction, and it's about young people making mistakes and making the right decisions after that. And I mean, okay, to further sell you on it, Christopher Lloyd is in it, Tim Curry is in it. John Cleese, who's the guy who played Frodo? Elijah Wood.
Elijah, yeah, there you go.
So it's got like good voice actors in it, but I mean the storytellers, the cartoonists, and the writers who did this series, they really knocked it out of the park. They did a home run with this thing, and I think it's going to be a timeless classic. It has
That
a
is
very
cool.
has a very 1910, 1920s kind of silent film visual style to it.
What, so the artwork really reminds me of a video game, Professor Layton in the Curious Village,
No,
or Professor Layton in the Diabolical Machine. I wonder, like, I did see like the cover artwork for that, and yeah, I'm sold. I need to check this out. But the artwork, I was like, is that related? I don't know. Could just be style, but it looked. I'm curious. I'll have to check that out.
I will say that the supercast I recorded with Dave is loaded with spoilers, but we mark it. You know, we waited for the second half, and we're like, okay, this is the spoiler section. Do not listen any further if you haven't watched it and you don't want to spoil it, because there's a lot of. I don't want to say it's one of those things where it's like you got to watch from the beginning and then you got to wait 6 episodes before it gets any good. No, there's payoff right from the start, but there's way more payoff. This is something Dave observed that I thought was just spot on about the series. You watch it once all the way through, and you're like, wow, that was good. But if you watch it a second time all the way through, you see clever things that they show you early on that you're like, oh, they were telegraphing this from the beginning, but I didn't see it coming, you know? And there's not a single moment in the story that doesn't have some kind of narrative payoff. Like, nothing's in there just for pure whimsy. Like, every action the characters take has some kind of effect on something that happens later in the story.
Wow.
So, just pure animation perfection. And it's so great that it's just 10 parts at like 10 minutes apiece. So it's like something you can watch in an afternoon with your daughter.
Sounds wonderful.
Great. Over the Garden Wall from Cartoon Network. The other thing I've been watching is I've been, over the last year, I've been assembling a playlist on YouTube. I mean, one of the wonderful things about YouTube is anybody can upload stuff to it, and you can find some really rare, out-of-the-way gems of television on there. You know, like think of any particular period of television that you want to watch. Like, seriously, 1950s game shows, you can find them on there. What's My Line? The Name's the Same.
Yep.
Beat the
70s
Clock.
game shows too, like Let's Make a Deal.
Yeah.
Yep.
You can find all that stuff on there. It's really great. And then YouTube has this other wonderful feature called, like private playlists. You can make your own playlist. So like whenever I come across like an out of the way 80s cartoon, I've got an 80s cartoon playlist that I just add that to right away. And then even like commercials from 80s Saturday mornings, right? So it's like, oh, here's like a Frankenberry commercial, here's Smurfberry Crunch commercial, Pac-Man cereal commercial. Grabbing all those and putting them into a playlist and then just shuffling them up. And something that it's been my comfort food in the background, in a way to reacquaint myself with some things I haven't watched in ages, like Popples. Do you remember Popples?
I do.
I mean, they had a cartoon
Yeah.
series. It was a Deke cartoon series, and I remembered it, but I don't remember watching it.
They were
And
like little pillow animals you could that flipped inside themselves, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
they were like basically like rabbit teddy bears that you could like push them inside of their back, and then they
Mhm.
turn into a ball
Yeah.
with a little tuft of hair on the top. And I mean, not much narrative device there except that feature that they could turn into a ball, but they figured out a way to do it. And I'm not saying it was amazing storytelling, but it was fun to reacquaint myself with some of these lost things.
Hmm.
And you know, it's just a great way to transport yourself to a different time. You know, so like something I've been saying for years, and I probably even said here on the LIA Cast, is I would probably pay for cable if they could give me like here's the 1956 channel, and all we're gonna play is like if it's December 19th and you turn it on, this is what was airing December 19th in 1956 all day long, right? Commercials and everything. And if they had
That's
that for like
intriguing.
every year they did that, right? So like you'd have like a 1985 channel, and like you know, and within that channel, because we could do this now, you can like bury lots and lots of feeds on top of one signal. You know, I could have like ABC, NBC, CBS, and then I could have like the UHF stations that I tuned into. Like even have it like be tuned into localities. That'd be pretty sweet. That's total pie in the sky stuff, but yeah, it's like you know, I have a couple custom playlists that I put together for this kind of thing. And my favorite one lately has been the 80s cartoon playlist. Also, I have a video game soundtrack playlist that I've been using a lot. You know, like, oh, here's the entire score to Metroid Prime. Here's the entire score to Zelda Wind Waker. Here's the entire score to Super Mario Galaxy. It was
All in YouTube.
all in YouTube.
That's cool. We were Kim Holm, friend of the podcast. He tweeted us that he would love a complete end-to-end lean into art actual feed like you described, but
Yeah.
a public one. And because it turns out like, well, we have one, but it's not quite complete on YouTube.
Mhm.
Of course, you can peruse the website and get to everything. Because I mean, back in the day, we recorded via different technologies and what have you, and so at a certain point, they all should be there, except for a couple times where we recorded with my account or whatever. But anyway,
But that shouldn't
interesting.
preclude me from adding it to the playlist because yeah, on my YouTube channel there's a lead into art playlist where
Yep,
all the
exactly.
episodes that we recorded through my account are all there. But I should be able to add the ones that we recorded on your account there too.
Mm-hmm.
That would still leave us a few videos short, I think, because there are some where we didn't upload them to you. What?
Well, there's a couple of audio only
Yeah,
podcasts
that's
sprinkled in. Yep. But
But-
interesting. Since you mentioned the YouTube playlist thing, that's really handy. It's almost like YouTube is like one of your media players.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I totally use it, but as like a one-off solution. You know what I mean? Like that's really good. You've got a library there. Huh.
Yeah. Well,
Cool.
and especially ever since I got a Chromecast, right? So once I got the Chromecast and I've got it hooked up to my TV, and now that I've got my tablet that I can work on in any room of the house, I'm not anchored to that desk behind me anymore. Some afternoons when I'm working, I'll just go sit in the living room. I'll curl up in my favorite chair, kind of thing. Oh, I got a favorite chair, Rob. That makes me old. But I'll curl up in that chair, and I'll start working, and I'll just pop up the Chromecast, pull up one of my YouTube playlists, and just let it run. So I'm like and it takes me back to being like 10 in the mid 80s, laying on the living room floor while I had the VCR tapes of all the cartoons I recorded playing on an endless loop. Because remember how like in VHS tapes, I should say, you had extended play and long play. I think it was EP and LP.
They were so confusing. I had to look them up, even when I used them all the time. There's extended play, long play, and super long play.
Super long play, SLP. That's right.
Yeah, exactly. SLP, EP, and what are SP?
SP. And the different, it would record the video at different compression settings, I guess. Some kind of like if you recorded extended play, you get 2 hours per tape. If you did it standard play, no.
Basically,
Well-
the information was more dense because the tape would travel either faster or slower. Right.
That's right. And so if you did it super long play, you could get upwards of 6 hours per tape,
mm,
right? But then in the mid '80s they came out with these tapes that were like double reeled. Like it was like like double rolls of paper towels, so you could get 12 hours of video on one of those tapes. So I had I don't know how many of those tapes I had completely filled to the rim with cartoons. So I'd come home from school, I'd break out my binder, I'd get my glass of milk, and then I would sit there and I would draw comics while just like 6 hours of cartoons would play.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
And here I am 30 years later doing the same darn thing.
It's right, amazing the things technology gives us. So no, that's pretty darn cool. I mean, and you don't have to deal with the completely I don't know if that's just total crystal clear to you, but the silly VHS crap that was always befuddling to me, even remembering now, befuddling, where it's like SPEP, whatever, SLP. You just get to make a playlist and it magically shows up on your TV. So yeah, that's cool. Actually,
well, let me tell. Yeah,
right.
That's another thing. Is like this is how what an embarrassment of riches we have nowadays. Is I had to put a DVD in a DVD player the other day, and I was like, "Bull!" Like, I cannot believe I have to pull a disc out of a case, put it in here, pull up a menu screen, and hit play. I've become so accustomed to just doing a quick search for the thing and then flicking the thing to my screen, and it's just there, right? And then the other cool thing is that you amass a huge collection casually, right? Like every time, because like YouTube does a wonderful job of showing you, like, hey, if you watch this, you may also like this. So like every time I log into YouTube, it like gives me a whole collection of like, here's like a whole bunch of cartoons. Like I see you've collected a lot of '80s cartoons. Here's a whole bunch more that you may not have seen. Oh, cool, Turbo Teen. I haven't watched that in ages. I'm gonna put that in there, and you just hit plus, 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 plus. Boom, playlist is filled.
That's awesome. All right, I'm gonna have to experiment with this.
It's pretty great. I mean, especially when you had, like you've said, we got these phones on us and these tablets on us everywhere, right? And you got a Chromecast at home too, don't you?
I don't have a Chromecast, but
you got AirPlay. AirPlay works just the same.
Yeah, totally. Got AirPlay. That's awesome. So that's intriguing. Do you have any public lists, or is that's
I
all
do.
private? Oh, okay.
No, I've got a couple of public lists on my YouTube channel. I've got one for the Comics Are Great show. I got one for LIA Cast, and then I started one where I called Cartoons with Good Writing, where I was adding cartoons to it. I haven't maintained it, and I noticed that a lot of the cartoons I had on there got taken off because of DMCA takedowns. And that's another thing that happens is like you find some good shows. Like I found like the entire Galaxy Rangers cartoon series, and I was like, oh, add the whole thing to my playlist. And like a few weeks later, they were gone because of DMCA takedown. So you're playing a little bit of whack-a-mole with this, cat and mouse games. But, it's like gardening. It's just something you just keep attending to every once in a while, and then you have this constant stream of awesome stuff. So I found like old Saturday Supercade shows like Frogger and Donkey Kong, the Pac-Man animated series. I found a bunch of those episodes. Found Mask, Mask Crusaders working overtime fighting crime. Like I said, Popples, Strawberry Shortcake, dozens and dozens of toy commercials, So, like, I've got every He-Man toy commercial ever. And I want to say this. Those He-Man commercials, the earliest ones, really nice. They always featured Dad playing with the kids. Like, later on, it turned into just, like, the kids playing with each other. But, like, in the earliest ones, it's always, like, Dad doing, like, the fantasy playing with the toys with the children. I thought that was pretty neat. Anyway, do we need to get to playing? I don't want to take up too much time.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so at least we can cover a few things in there. So a couple things. Just playing, I think, often infers like, oh, there's video games and there's so many different devices to consume them on, and I definitely have a few things I'm trying to get back into. And I'm enjoying, kind of like you're describing, getting back in touch with certain things that I found very, very formative and inspirational, right? And it's kind of nice to where like some games get re-released on like new platforms, and like I've a comfort food game that I enjoy is the Sega Genesis version of Golden Axe, and I've got that on my iPhone, and it's not my favorite version of it, right? But it's good. My favorite home version of that right now, well, of course, there's my Genesis, but there's it's on the Wii Virtual Arcade. Totally great version of it. Anyway, but beyond that, which that wasn't even on the list that I was going to mention. I'm looking forward to playing around with this holiday with some Legos and also my Raspberry Pi. So couple of like just hardware things to try to Legos are like a nice comfort food, relaxing thing. I've got this snow speeder that's been sort of, I don't know why, but it's been like within arm's reach for 8 months now. And I like look over, it's still there, and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to put you together someday. And I want to actually do that. And then I would like to, with my Raspberry Pi, I want to be able to do something to remote launch a paper airplane.
You better explain what a Raspberry Pi is, just in case. I mean, not
Oh
everybody...
gosh, yeah, of course. So Raspberry Pi is this little computing. Oh, hold on, it's within arm's reach. And it's raspberry spelled like the fruit, but then pi spelled like the math number pi, and it's essentially
It's a
computer
motherboard
that could fit in like an Altoids tin size computer, and it's fully capable to run an operating system where it boots up an operating system via a mini. This version boots it up via a micro SD card, and so that's running Linux, and then it has an HDMI out, and it has USB, right? Like what, 4 USB ports plus an Ethernet port, and then you give it some power through like micro USB. And you plug in a mouse and a keyboard and a monitor, you have a computer. That's it. This whole darn thing's a computer, and it was designed to help with.
that's just it. I know. Again, I'm showing my age, but that's Jetson stuff, man.
Oh, it's crazy. And it's so it was essentially designed to help with computer literacy and to give a sense of ownership for school-age children in the UK, where I think a couple of people who used to work in the cell phone industry were like thinking, oh gosh, I could make a general purpose computer with some of these things, and they ended up being able to do that and manufacturing it where like it's roughly $25. And I got this whole kit for like $50 because it comes with this little this tiny USB that's a wireless networking card, and it came with an external power adapter and a HDMI cable, a little kit, right? And of course the case, because the Raspberry Pi is just a little board, like you said, Jersey, and it was like $50. Then when you boot it up, you can let's see. I'm trying to remember. I'm still kind of a noob to this, where the version of the Raspberry Pi boot disk thing that I ran, it was sort of a self-configuring. It was a menu. It was like, hey, which flavor of Raspberry Pi operating system do you want to run? And it had different flavors of Linux and BSD and whatever. And one of them was I forget, just something desktop, and I was like, oh cool. So I ran that, and like it's got these programs where you can learn how like Scratch is a little development environment where you can drag and drop these building blocks to tell stuff on the screen to do stuff, where you're learning how to code, but instead of actually writing if this then that type statements and then saying move this thing which is stored in this variable to this position and whatever, you are just adding these building blocks, which is like, tell the mouse or the little character to go to X position 20 and then tell.
But it's teaching you that if this then that logic.
Totally is.
But in a visual sense or a visual way.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to playing with this to then introduce it to my daughter.
Super cool. And like $50 to get a working Linux computer. That's crazy.
Exactly. Like you're not going to be editing video on this, but yet there are flavors of this where you can essentially make your own Roku kind of thing out of this, where it's a little Xbox Media Center it, the reason to do it that way is to have the experience of making it, right? I mean, because Rokus are not much more, but it's yeah, it's really amazing. So what I'm hoping to do is combine this plus this little electric plane launcher kit that I bought at for like $15, and have it, I don't know, somehow chuck paper airplanes. We'll see what happens. But anyway, that's playing. I mean, it's some things I want to play.
Right.
How about you, Jersey?
As I thought about this part of the topic, it occurred to me that you always like to lovingly chastise yourself for having a pop culture deficit. I have a gaming deficit. I have a play deficit that I've been building. Is that as I thought about it, I was like, what have I played? What have I played? I have not played anything in months. Months. I mean, I think I played a little bit of I broke out Skylanders for like an afternoon, like earlier this year. But I mean, it seriously was like I got an afternoon, and that's all I get with this thing. And it wasn't like where I was being like rationing to be a tough guy or anything. It was just, it really was a bandwidth issue. And let me tell you, that new Skylanders trap team thing, very tempting. I saw the display at the store. Those designs, those characters are adorable. There's like a really super cute snake guy and like alligator guy, and they got cool weapons, and the idea that you can trap the bad guys and make them work for you. Very compelling, very sinister in terms of marketing. But and it's for the Wii, so like that's like the wonderful thing where it's like, I can't commit to buying a Wii just yet, so that's what's keeping it at arm's length, because I know if I get it, it'll be the purest crack ever. I don't know if I told you, but like 2 years ago, how that game consumed a December for me.
Yeah, I remember that. I don't know which podcast. I think you talked about it a bit, a little bit, maybe on Lena Tart a couple of years ago.
I loved Skylanders so much.
Yeah, it really does sound like. I've heard nothing but good things about it, honestly. So
I have friends who are parents who hate it with all their hearts because of the merciless marketing, the diabolical marketing engine behind it, where it's like, oh, to unlock this section of the game, you have to have this kind of character. Go to your local Toys R Us to get them, right? And now, like the new trap team thing, they've sort of geometrically compounded that whole problem-solving thing, because to trap certain kinds of guys, you need this kind of trap, which can be sold for $6.99 in addition to this $12.99 character. So now you have five different categories of characters that you have to buy in order to unlock everything in the game, and then 5 different kinds of traps that you need to get in order to unlock everything in the game, right? So already, ching, 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 and big problems for if you're a parent. But for an adult who has some kind of discretionary income, not as big a problem. And yeah, I think the story I told was like the first year it came out, when we got the game, I got it for Anne for Christmas. We played it together, and over the next 2 weeks, over Christmas break or whatever you want to call it, I wound up spending somewhere between $60 to $80 on Skylanders figures that we had no intention of spending, you know?
Yeah.
So...
and that's the game, if I'm remembering correctly, you sort of saved the ending, right?
What's that?
Did you save the ending of that, where you're like, we're getting really close to solving it?
Yep.
Don't want to...
I can't. Neither of us can like commit to finishing the game because we don't want it to be over.
Yeah.
So yeah. Yeah, it's a boatload of fun. And I mean, and as I've talked about in the past, I mean, the general conceit of the game, I think that is so brilliant is that these warriors from another dimension got banished to our dimension and turned into the toys you see on the shelves. So when you're buying the toy, you're not just buying a toy, you're saving a heroic warrior. And when you put him on that portal and he goes in the game, you're releasing him back into his world. And like they even say, like, well done, a portal master, you've saved the Skylander. Pff, come on, what kind of like...
Oh, boy.
Yeah, what kind of lizard brain mojo are you playing with when you do that? That's where I say it's like it's diabolical, it's sinister, but it works. So yeah, but like I said, that's like all I've played this year.
What kind of thing? I've got a pile of games on the list here. Like, not that I would pretend like we have the same exact taste or whatever, but I'm like one way to pick something off this list Is okay. So you're thinking like, do you have like an iOS device to access some gaming possibility, or
Yeah, I mean,
okay,
I got an Android phone. I could play games on
Android
that.
phone, or okay? Because I don't know if like there's a game that I know is on iOS. I don't know if it's on Android, but Rampart Rush. Ever? Yeah,
Tower defense game.
it's free, and I don't know
Uh,
why they have it for free, but you know, because I'd pay for it. But it's an interesting kind of like, in a way, a simplified tower defense game. It's almost like a fort defense game where you literally have this wall that you can reinforce with different with you know, different levels of strength and whatnot, and then you have the weapon that you are able to bring to bear, which is in a way like you could charge up the gun in Space Invaders, right? But then
hmm.
there's waves of enemies that come vertically down at you, or angles and whatever, and they kind of maybe shuck and jive a little bit like enemies on Centipede. But yeah, it's a lovely simple game that like you can have the just play it with one thumb kind of thing. It's not too wild and complex, but it's yeah, totally enjoyable. Simple.
Rampart Rush is such an Atari name too. That sounds like something that would have been on a cartridge in 1983.
Yeah.
I did play another game this year. I forgot.
Ooh.
When you were out here for Kids Read Comics, we played Space Team. That was a lot of fun.
Space Team is good. Yeah, worth mentioning, and that is cross-platform, and you can have like so. Gosh, it's weird. It's basically it's multiplayer in the same location, and all the different players have like a view of a view of like a theoretically a spaceship's set of controls, and everyone's a captain of that ship, and they need to keep it running. But then, in order to keep it running, you have to work together with the other people that are running their ship or whatever. Or I don't know. I'm messing up the metaphor but
But
basically,
you're basically on the bridge of the Enterprise, and you know how Captain Kirk has to shout out everything that the crew has to do. Energize the forward shields. Bring the warp cells to full power. Go 45 degrees port starboard, right? Whatever
exactly.
nonsense nautical language he uses in there. But my screen, if Rob and I are playing, like our ship is going, speeding through the universe, and then my screen will say, polarize the forward shields. And I have to tell Rob, polarize forward shields. And then Rob has to find that command on his screen and hit polarize forward shields in time. If he doesn't do it in time, the ship receives damage. And then Rob has to fire off an order back at me. It's like, neutralize the gravity plating. All right, neutralizing gravity plating. And then I have to hit it, and then, right? And it got very stressful and fun.
Exactly, because as you make mistakes, the ship shakes and the controls start to wobble and fall off their control board and whatnot, and it's all just animating stuff on a screen, right? But
Yeah.
it's like you need to flip these switches and turn those knobs and slide those sliders, and it's yeah, really clever, um, sort of minimalist game, and super funny too. They play with the whole language of it in a good tongue in cheek way, making fun of.
I wish we would have recorded our session doing that game, because what I remember about it was you were very even keeled. All of your orders were issued very calmly, and my voice started getting higher and higher and louder and louder as we were going. And when I was repeating the order back to you, when you'd say like neutralize the forward plating, I'd be neutralizing forward plating. So I'm sure that would have been fun for other people to watch too or listen to.
That's yeah, maybe. I'm pretty sure I was getting stressed too. It's well set up because
One sweat bead went like this down the side of your head, but that's all you gave away.
exactly.
It was very Fist of the North Star.
Yeah. um, excellent. That I'm glad you. Yeah, that's a super good one to mention. That honestly great to break out at a holiday, and a good way to unite a divided family that's cross-platform.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
So Rampart Rush and
Yep.
Space Team.
Yep.
Any others that you wanted to throw out?
Oh, let's see. How about let's see.
Mario Kart 8. I am so looking forward to playing that.
Oh my gosh, it's really good. I don't own a Wii U, but I have had a chance to play it a few times.
Mm-hmm.
It's really well done. Like there's some cool there's different kinds of car customization where like so it makes this more complex set of variables. Like you can pick whatever kind of glider wing your car has, plus the kind of tires, plus the kind of chassis. So you have some interesting combinations. Like you could have, I think I'm exaggerating this, but more or less like a monster truck with tiny wheels, or like a tiny car with monster truck wheels, and really switch stuff up. Things that are like those little electric glowing hover car discs, or whatnot. And plus the game has these like gliding dynamics, right? Where you could have a parachute, where you have a lot more, it's more mellow control or whatever. You can have a hang glider where you better, dial in wherever you're going really quickly, but you move faster, but it's riskier. And yeah, it's so many cool different levels that go up walls, underwater, cross.
Now that I think about it, in the
canyons.
earlier Mario Kart games, you did not have car customization, did you? It's just you had the character and the car or cart, and each one had different abilities, right? So like Bowser and Kong could corner better, but they were slower, whereas and Luigi or Toad and Yoshi were faster, but a little harder to control, that kind of thing. But now you can actually customize the cars. That's actually pretty cool.
Oh yeah, it's really well done. And of course, it's one of those things where you are rewarded by the more you play the game, the more kinds of things you unlock. Where like, oh, there's a new parachute, there's a new character, there's a new,
Son of a gun.
exactly, new wheels. They do a really good job with that, and it's beautiful. And like it really is a nice aesthetic upgrade for the series. Even when like you're going through tracks that you have seen before, different multiple generations, because it seems like Mario Kart keeps certain circuits but then adds just a few new ones, right? But like most of the new variability comes in the kind of cars and the racers and stuff, and then modern treatment of those existing tracks, like
See, that's almost enough to make me push the plunger and get a Wii U.
It's well, if you try it, then you're going to plunge. I've had some cool down time, so yeah, but it's high on my list. It's anyway, it's really, really, really well done.
Call back to an earlier part of the discussion. Shadowing Tronics is in the chat, and he asked me earlier, he's like, isn't Galaxy Rangers still on Hulu? And he said he did a Saturday night showcase on the first 2 episodes, and then while we were talking, he looked up and found it on Hulu. So thank you for that, Shadowing Tronics. I'll include that link in the show notes. And do send us a link to the Saturday night showcase that you did on your website, bwspotlight.com, so we can link to it in the show notes as well for people who are interested in learning more about Galaxy Rangers, because an anecdote we've told before on the show is when Rob made the mistake of asking me about that show, and then I think I took a breath after about 6 or 7 minutes.
And yeah, exactly. It was one of those moments where I'm like, wow, I saw the depth of your understanding of that, and it was
well. I'm glad that Shadowing Tronics is here to show that I'm not the only one who gets that worked up about this stuff. Are there any more games you want to go through, or do we want to get to listening?
Yeah, let's you know what, let's do some listening.
Although you said iOS Samurai Showdown, is that the Samurai Showdown I'm thinking of?
It is, yeah, totally. It's so Neo Geo. There's a totally game system that has a place in my heart, but not on my shelf, because it haunts me. I don't own one. It just it's the one that got away, and it was always the beyond the current level and whatnot. And they had certain games that were just very well crafted, like Samurai Showdown. If you're into the first generation of like it's not first generation fighting game, but it's like the first like mega hit generation of fighting game, like Street Fighter 2, and then different clones and competitors came out, and there was sort of like the cream of the crop of one of those competitors was this game series called Samurai Showdown, where they added weapons and whatnot to these essentially two characters sparring one another in sort of a rapid 2-dimensional game of chess. And you play like kind of like boxing rules or whatever, where you try to get the other character's health down before the timer runs out, or whoever's the lowest when the timer runs out, kind of thing. And then it has all these sort of special moves that you can learn from all this, this big roster of characters. And then, so the game is interesting because of the characters and the settings and the in my opinion, I have affection for that era of music, and it's just really, to me, it's really well done. It was the cream of the crop back then.
I remember when it came out, and I remember it was one of those moments where it was like, whoa, the animation in the game, the design, the complexity of the colors, and the soundtrack, everything just came together on that, and it really felt like fighting game just turned a corner. I think it came out around the same time as like Virtua Fighter. Do you remember Virtua Fighter?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, and like that was like, it's 3D now. What? But like the rendering of the polygons wasn't as clean in the very first one. It looked very very much like the Dire Straits Money for Nothing video. And then it got a little bit more amazing as time went on. Like when you got I forget
Tekken.
some of the other one.
Yeah,
Tekken.
I mean,
Yeah.
so Tekken was a pretty solid improvement over that, and then, yeah, there's, I don't know, I can't think of like who carried that forward extremely beyond that, but like, because then you kind of had the parallel of like the 2-dimensional art and the 3-dimensional art series that sort of lived on, but competed amongst themselves to get people's quarters. And anyway, the iOS version of Samurai Showdown is pretty well done. Like, even though you have this little touch screen, it does a decent job of it more or less lets you trigger special moves. If you want, you could have like a simplified button layout, or you could use the normal button layout and do it the hard way.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Did you have a favorite character in Samurai Showdown?
It's been too long. I don't remember.
Oh.
I mean, for some reason, Street Fighter 2 had this imprinting on me that Samurai Showdown did not. I remember the feeling of the game. I remember the sound, and I remember the general sound, like the sound effects of the game for some reason. Yeah. But I don't have any like strong memory of a particular character. I'm
trying to think of like how the heck could I have? It's because I had a video game store that you could rent a Neo Geo, right? Which was freaking amazing. Yeah. It was to be able to, yeah, I mean, again, it's like being able to rent a darn helicopter or something. It's like, yeah, okay. I'll have it back before my late fee, kicks in.
Yeah.
And so I was able to spend enough time with it to really attach. And anyway, my favorite character is Ukyo Tachibana. So.
Which was?
He's got the blue long hair, and he kind of he holds his sword with his he holds his sword kind of away from his opponent, and so he's looking over his shoulder and stuff. Anyway, he's kind of aloof.
Darkstalker.
Yeah.
Darkstalkers. Which was your favorite Darkstalker?
I didn't really have one. I'm embarrassed. I think I played the Catwoman most. So
I like the Mummy. I like that movie did when he's like made his feet all big.
The Mummy was awesome because he also had the he was definitely an homage to Iron Maiden Eddie at different times. He had some moves where he would have the.
We are firmly in extra lean territory now. So now
Totally.
let's get to listening. The final the bonus part of the topic.
Yeah. So okay, maybe you have a lot of travel, some or just either whatever kind of downtime or ambient kind of listening stuff. I thought it'd be worth working in there because there could be a chunk of hours that I don't know. Who knows? Maybe there's something fun to check out there that isn't like an ebook. So I've been getting caught up on Comics Are Great. And I've still got a ways to go because I'm currently on the episode about banned comics. I'm almost done with that one, but.
You know what? I almost tweeted about that. I went back and listened to that one when I was editing putting the final touches on it. I'm really proud of the way that one came together. That was one where I was like outside of my comfort zone in terms of topic, but I feel like Dave Carter and I put together a pretty good discussion on the topic.
It is a great tour of the strengths of the comic medium and why they need to be defended. and how they are a very a lovely art form, worthy of study and celebration. And it was just a great tour of those kinds of ideas. And then thinking about how when people don't feel that way and they try to, attack comics and
And
whatnot.
I learned that from you. But yeah, it was at comicsagreat.com/CAG105. That was the Banned Books episode. We were talking about it for Banned Books Week. With
Jersey.
Dave, yeah.
Yeah. What's that?
Oh, no. What else? What else is good listening besides?
How about you? You've got some podcast listening, don't you?
So yeah, I recently started re-listening to a podcast I haven't listened to in a couple years called On Being with Krista Tippett. Have you listened to this?
Mm-mm.
I think it's something that would fall into your general realm of taste. It's an NPR show, so it's a pretty quiet show, but like with stimulating conversation, but just very quiet, like fresh air, that kind of thing. But it's a woman who just interviews thinkers and philosophers, and it tends to cross the line from philosophy into spirituality every once in a while, but not in a way where I feel like it's getting weird. And when I say that, what I mean is like with spirituality, there's a difference between talking about spirituality and talking about dogma, right? This is the practice that I have because this is what's right. Whereas just talking about like what is the common human experience, what is the thing that unites all humans in some form or another, that kind of difference.
Yeah, exploration versus like recruitment or enforcement.
There you go. Yes, thank you. And what got it back on my radar was actually somehow a link came across on my feeds about on an episode with Brené Brown in it, and I know we had just been talking about her, so I was like, oh, I'll give this a listen. And then when I went back and listened to the show, I was like, oh, I forgot how good Krista Tippett is at interviewing people and pulling out interesting thoughts, and how well researched she is as a host. So if you enjoy the Lean Into Artcast, I think you would probably get a kick out of On Being. It's on onbeing.org. That's where you can find the show.
That's awesome. I got to check it out. Okay, one more podcast on my list I want to mention. The Lost Cast, which actually Lost Decade Games, they're the folks who actually made Rampart Rush. And so they are a game development and design company that I know that they do like consulting and services and whatnot, but their primarily primary drive for their company's existence is to make games. But then they started a podcast partway along their journey and started to just share what they do.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and along the way, they've really developed an incredible vocabulary for critiquing their own work that I think is super fascinating. And it can come off as like they'll have a lot of self-deprecating humor from time to time. It varies by episode, but like it's it's from a place of humor or whatnot. And that combined with the critique, I think sometimes that could be, well, gosh, they really don't like what they make. No, honestly, they really are increasing their vocabulary on how they frame up what they want to make better about what they make. And I find that alone is pretty awesome, worth listening to. But then, of course, if you're into the idea of making games, it's a really, really fun show.
Old Lost Cast. I know you've mentioned it before.
Mm-hmm.
I will follow up on it now. That's an awesome review. Okay, well, we've got other ones. How about I link to these other ones in the show notes? Right? Like we don't have time to talk about them all, but we can link to them. That's
cool. Why not?
Yeah.
We could get linkerific on this and yeah.
So you can find all the links to everything we talked about and more at leanintoart.com. Real quick, do we want to blast through the Lean Into Art holiday listening list? Because you took time to put together some curated playlists, which I thought was a really great idea. I wish I would have thought of it.
I would love to do a quick drive-by for these. So
Please.
Let's say you are thinking, my gosh, I really want to hear more Robin Jersey or what have you. And this 2 hours wasn't enough. And if that's the case, I've got a couple of themes that I think are fun little tours or dives through the archives. On the topic of webcomics, creative path, design, and then techniques. For webcomics, there's Lean Into Our Cast 97, Grinding Through Your Webcomic with Casey Van Heis and Megan Brennan.
Great episode.
That was, fun conversation. So, such a cool exploration of that, the webcomics journey. And then 99, where we're Patreons of the Arts.
John Rosenberg.
Yep. Exactly. There's a lot of webcomics knowledge there.
Yeah, we spend a lot of time talking about the Patreon funding platform, but I think we wind up talking a lot about the philosophy of treating your webcomic as a business throughout the whole thing. Yeah, John Rosenberg was great on that episode. Did you know he was undergoing surgery recently? He was public about that.
Yeah, and he's doing some recovery. I hope he's doing well.
Yeah, I hope he's doing well.
Yeah,
he seems to be.
Well being relative. I think he's in the tough, painful stage after the good drugs wear off.
Yeah.
Which is very tough.
Yeah, definitely. All right, creative path.
Yeah, creative path. You know what? I picked episode 76, where
it's a good episode, dude. It's so good. I get to say that because I wasn't on it.
Yeah, everyone doubts, and it's in a way. I mean, I think it's somewhat a vulnerability themed episode, and worth looking into. As far as just. Finding comfort in the discomfort of how the creative path can be pretty challenging, and
listening to Kate, your wife, do some serious interview foo on you, where she put you in a corner, she put you against that turnbuckle, and she was not letting you out.
Yeah, that's funny. Yes,
it was great.
Exactly. She's very good at that. And I exactly, and I obviously, and I appreciate that too. It's as uncomfortable as it can be. But then there's also 108, leaving the safety of your wheelhouse with Ryan Estrada. I thought it was tough to pick. I'm like, I have to pick a Ryan Estrada episode. That was a hard choice.
Yeah.
But I thought that is such a fun tour of like Ryan's adventures and how he is expanding his creative horizons by putting himself in some pretty interesting situations and rolling with it. So really, really fun episode. And then design, of course, we have our Thinking About Design series. In general, that it's a thoughtful tour of what is design and how do we get better at it, and looking at some cool examples out in the world. And that's Lean Into Our Cast 22, 24, and 26. 3-part series. Techniques, another tough one to pick, but and because we explore a lot of things related to, like, well, how do we get better at storytelling, and I thought the 5 tips episode, which is one of the first episodes that like just, it's interesting, like how people just kept reacting and over time, where Jersey took this tour of, well, what are some things that were lessons that stood the test of time for what he absorbed from the techniques used in 80s cartoon storytelling. So that's awesome, and
that one was kind of like structured like a talk. That one was less of a discussion as it was of you facilitating me doing a presentation on a topic.
Oh yeah, and it's a good talk. Like, and yep, you get a front row seat and it's free. So then there's like this little stretch that's like in the very near to where we currently are in the archive, right? Where 107, which is making nonfiction comics with Dan Mishkin. I just thought such a wonderful tour of just how he's thinking through the writing discipline and role and the collaborative aspects, and it's great. And also hearing you two together talk about your really huge project.
And plus, I could just listen to Dan talk about comics forever.
Oh,
I mean,
gosh.
he's as you've observed, he's infinitely quotable.
The amount of quotes in that one are pretty out of hand. It's wonderful. Then there's 109, telling your story with color with Owen Jollins, right? Just going through color theory and some practical examples and really good stuff.
Great one.
And more as far as practical hands-on stuff, and if definitely focused on a particular product, but what's so great about Manga Studio?
So 111.
Questioned and explored that tool and got through some good tips. And there you go. So there's a little playlist for webcomics, creative path, design, and techniques,
which will all be linked in the show notes at leanintoart.com. So cool. Well, hey, guess what, Rob? This was the last show of 2014.
Yeah, it's been a fun year, Jersey.
Yeah, it's been another fun year.
Whatever we end up doing next year, we talk about evolving and continuing to update. So it's going to be looking forward to it.
Another year of evolution.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, this is the part where I say to everybody, if you enjoyed this discussion, if you had a good time listening to this, or if you feel like you got something out of it, or if you just in general, just like tuning into our show, a great way you can let us know that you enjoy it is by going to our Patreon page. That's at patreon.com/leanintoart. And you can, throw in $1 a month and get some behind-the-scenes stuff, but also just have a nice, simple place, a one-stop shop to interact with us and get all the content that we make, the extra leans as well as the Lean Into Art Cast. You don't have to, donate any money, though. Or you could also just go to iTunes, give us a star review, however many stars you think we deserve. You don't have to do anything fancy, like write a big 5-paragraph review unless you feel like it. If you're watching it on YouTube, give us a thumbs up. That helps more people find the show. All these things help more people find the show or help make this thing into a sustainable project. And we thank everybody who's given us star reviews. We thank everybody who's given us thumbs ups on YouTube. And definitely huge thanks to everybody who supported us through Patreon. It means a lot to us that you guys would, help us make this thing into, like, our goal is we want to get to, like, $800 a month, I think is what we came up with for the sustainable trade level, right? To make this thing into a thing that pays for itself, right? For the time that we put into it. Ideally, it'd be better to get beyond that, but
exactly.
That's the milestone we're trying to hit right now. So every dollar helps us get there. So thank you to everybody who chipped in on the Patreon. I think that's it, Rob.
Yes, totally. It was a big tour, but it was a gentle tour too.
It was fun. I hope everybody else got a kick out of it. I know I had a good time talking with you about it.
Yes, and honestly, I want to pick your brain again in the future for some of the stuff that you end up finding out there, because I like the curated list. I think if I go from that list, I might not step on a Snowpiercer.
All right. Well, maybe it's time for me to do a public YouTube playlist as well.
Ooh. Cool.
I will cogitate it. I will consider it. All right, guys. Hey, everybody who's watching the week of the recording that this was made, happy holiday season to you all. A safe and happy holiday season. Hope you guys get some rest. Hope you guys get recharged for a new year ahead of us and taking on all sorts of new creative challenges. So thanks, Rob, for another great year. And until next time, I've been Jersey Drozd of leanintoart.com and Jersey on Twitter.
And thank you, Jersey, for another great year. And thank you, listeners. I've been Rob Stenzinger of leanintoart.com and Rob Stenzinger on Twitter.
Okay, bye.
Show notes for this episode can be found at leanintoart.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at the user leanintoart, and you can reach us via email at leanintoart@gmail.com. And remember, leaners aren't wieners. Thanks for listening.
All right, I'm going to kill the stream. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us, watching and listening. We'll see you guys in 2 weeks.
Thank you. Good night.